Hi everybody, Diane Morrison here again. This is day 2 of my 30 days, 30 authors challenge. And today, my project is to discuss why I write. So, I don't know, I guess there's a smart-ass answer and there's a more nuanced answer. And the smart-ass answer is, you mean I have a choice? Okay, so the more nuanced answer to that is, I guess I feel it's a calling, right? Like, I've always wanted to tell stories. I was one of those really kind of ahead of things sort of kids. I was precocious, I think that's the word. I was right into this whole reading thing. I picked this spot because it was kind of out of the sun. Now I gotta move. Okay, but I used to listen to those Disney read-along records. My mom used to read to me a lot. It was an activity that we really liked doing together. And, well, I don't know if she liked reading to me, but I sure liked it when she read to me. And she did a lot of reading, which is probably significant. They say that if you do a lot of reading, then your kids are likely to be readers. And if you don't do a lot of reading, then they probably won't be. So I suppose it probably made a difference. And, I really liked it. And I picked it up very quickly. My parents are fully convinced that they have Sesame Street to thank for that, so maybe they did. I ran out of stuff to read in the house. They didn't want to buy any more books, so I started making up my own stories. Really is kind of the actual fact of it. Effectively my grandpa, right? He was my great uncle, Uncle Russ, but he's the man who raised my dad, so, he's my grandpa, right? He used to listen to me tell him stories for hours, and I would use things like, you had these Melmac orange coasters, very 70s, right? But I would use them to tell stories about the sun and moon. I remember doing this pretty intensely, so I've always done it. Then I got to kindergarten, and we had these assignments where what we would do is we would dictate our stories to parent helpers who would come in and write them down for us. And this was my absolute favorite thing to do. And I wrote really long stories. I've always written really long stories. And then, grade 1, we're supposed to do journal entries. This is what I did today. I thought that shit was just boring. I didn't want to write about that. So I wrote about poems and songs and little fairy tales and all kinds of little stuff like that. So it was a lot of fun. And so I've always written. Hey, babe. I'm live on Facebook right now, honey. So anyway, it just, I never quit, right? By the time I was 10, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I had read, actually, I should talk about my librarian, right? His name was Mr. Walter, Edward, I think was his first name, but I was really young, so don't quote me on that, but he realized that I was a really precocious reader, and that the primary school level books were way beneath my ability, and I found them boring as hell. So he let me access the intermediate library when I was 6, and the world opened up to me. I thought this was just the greatest thing in the whole world. I loved stories. He encouraged me to read all the classics of children's literature. I read Narnia, I read Beverly Cleary, I read Judy Blume, I read everything, right? Then when I ran out of that, I read The Diary of Anne Frank, right? I was 10 when I read that one, yeah. Alice in Wonderland, The Arabian Nights, I read it all. Then I got into mythology. I read, and at first, young people's translations, though, but I read the Odyssey, the Iliad, right, all of it. I loved it, and I ate it up. And then I started telling stories like that. I think the one I remember the most clearly is I sort of wrote my own version of Escape to Witch Mountain idea when I was about 10, and I shared some of that with my classmates. And they'll all tell you, right, if any of them see this on Facebook, they'll all talk about all the writing and that they figured that was what I was going to do with my life. So, about the same age, I found Stephen King's The Dead Zone. And I started reading that. And my mother took it away from me. And she was like, no, this is not appropriate reading for a 10-year-old child. You are not allowed to read this, right? And she hid it. But I found it again because she would keep her books so that she could take them back to the bookstore. And I started reading it again. And she caught me at it. And she said, if I take this away, you're just going to keep reading it, aren't you? I said, yeah, Mom, I am. Yep. My parents had already taught me the benefit of honesty and that I would get into less trouble if I were honest about things. So I said I was going to. And she said, you do know this is just a story, right? And I said, well, of course. So the very next day she took me down to the public library and she signed for me to have access to an adult library card, and from then on I could read whatever I wanted, and I read everything from that point. So one of the things that I read, I was about 12, I think, when I found Danse Macabre, which is Stephen King's first book on writing. This is the one on writing horror in particular, which has a lot of crossover with science fiction and fantasy, which I'd already decided that I was dedicated to. And, you know, I resonated with what he had to say. One of the things he had to say was that if you are a writer, you will always write. And there will be nothing that anybody can do. If, you know, even if it's crap, even if nobody wants to read it, even if you can't get a publisher, even if they lock you in a room and you're trying to write with, you know, charcoal or your own blood, right, you will do it. And it's the truth. Unfortunately, I was convinced that this would not be a career option, right? My parents were they realized I was a very dreamy, sort of naive child, and they wanted to impart a sense of reality on me, so they suggested that I should go into journalism, which I didn't have any interest in, because I wanted to write stories, not stuff that's happening. And they wanted me to do something else as a career and write on the side. And, you know, that's a mixed bag. In one sense, I'm glad that they gave me a sense of practicality, but on the other sense, this was bad advice, because writing is all I've ever wanted to do. And there are ways that I could have made a career out of it if I'd made an effort, but I didn't. I ended up being a stepmom at a very young age, and so I was very concerned about maintaining my family. We had to make money. I took, you know, it was the middle of the recession. It was 1994. You know, I did what I had to keep the family going, and that was primarily, you know, work, crap jobs. I didn't sleep much, so my son was very demanding of my time. He, you know, he had ADD and he had some behavioral issues, and it really was not possible to get a lot of writing done when he was small. So, and then when he was at school, I was sleeping, so I didn't do it for a long time. I didn't get back into it again until my husband was in a really bad car accident, and I had to leave my job anyway in order to be at his side while he was in the ICU. And I figured out that I was not doing what I wanted to do with my life, so I decided to do it. And I did National Novel Writing Month, which is, for those of you who don't know, a challenge to write a 50,000 word novel in the month of November. And how you do this is by writing 1,667 words a day. The more prolific indie authors who are watching this will say, yeah, no sweat, right? But when you're just starting, it's a bit of a challenge, but it's an essay. And by that time I was already writing regularly for a couple blogs, so I can handle it. So I did it. And it was a fan fiction book. That, by the way, we're going to talk about on another day, because I'm very excited about that. I'm now turning that fan fiction book into a series that will be its own standalone thing, so stay tuned for more information about that throughout the month. But Then I sat down and I wrote my non-fiction book that I've been planning to write for a while, and I sent it into a publisher and it got published. So my career in writing was started. But again, it's a bit of a side road, right? Ultimately what I really want to do is write fiction. And I think I tell pretty decent stories. I think people enjoy them. I think that's what I feel called to do. So there's my much more nuanced answer as to why I write. And I've talked more than long enough by now. I'm going to be in the Chasing Fireflies book launch event in about 45 minutes now. No, half an hour maybe? No, wait. No, what time is it? No, an hour and a half. Maybe an hour and 15 minutes now. 7 p.m. PDT. Anyway. Can you tell I'm tired today? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to do that. And I will be talking about some of my other projects there. And I just might go live for a few minutes in that event too. So if you get a chance to check it out, one of my stories is in there. And I cannot wait to share it with you. So thanks for